Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Sen and I'm with talktoCanada.com, and today we're going to be talking about euphemisms. Imagine that you had to tell someone that his brother died. What would you say? Would you just go up to him and say, "Oh, hey John, your brother died"? No, that's not very nice. So in English, we have something called euphemisms. And euphemisms are words that we use to soften the reality of what we're communicating to a listener or reader. So there are a number of different ways that we use euphemisms. So they're used to avoid using words that have a negative stigma attached to them. And words like, for example, war or sickness or death. It just helps soften it out a little bit, make it sound better than what it actually is. Another use for euphemisms is to avoid offending others by speaking of taboo or sacred subjects directly. So it helps, again, soften out the language and make it flow a little better and not so absurdly. And another use for euphemisms is to overinflate the importance of certain words. So, for example, instead of saying the boss, you can say the executive in that company. In general, we use euphemisms to express what is socially difficult to express in direct terms. So, for example, I have a number of examples for you. So, we have the first one here, passed away or passed on. Passed away or passed on is used instead of dead or died. So, for example, in my example about telling someone's brother that he died, you would say, "Your brother has passed away." It just sounds a little nicer and not so, not so bad, I guess. The situation is really bad. So let's try and use words that make it a little bit better, right? That's the whole point of euphemisms. So passed away instead of died or is dead. So my grandma passed away 10 years ago, for example. Another one, correctional facility. Correctional facility is actually used instead of jail. So instead of saying, "My dad is in jail," you would say, "Oh, my dad's in a correctional facility." It just makes it sound a little better. I hope none of your fathers are in correctional facilities. I'm just giving an example. My father is not, by the way. I'm just letting you guys know. Okay, anyhow, differently abled. Differently abled is used instead of handicapped or disabled. So it usually refers to people with a disability. It can be a physical disability or a mental disability or disorder. So we say differently abled. It sounds nicer, and handicapped is a very harsh word. A lot of people are offended when someone refers to them or their family members as a handicapped person. So it's not a very nice word to use. Differently abled, because they're probably maybe they can't walk, but they're really good at basketball. So they have different abilities than most of the other people around them. Next. All right, collateral damage. We hear that a lot in the news. And what is collateral damage? Collateral damage is a euphemism for accidental deaths. So when you hear collateral damage, it means accidentally 100 people died just by accident. No worries, it was an accident. That's what it means, but it sounds better than saying there were 100 accidental deaths, because then people would be like, "What? 100 accidental deaths? How is that an accident? How did that happen?" Right? So that's collateral damage. Letting someone go. Letting someone go is used instead of firing someone. So instead of saying, "John, you're fired," you say, "John, you've been great. We're letting you go." It just sounds nicer, even though what you're doing is probably not very nice. He's not going to like it, but sounds better. So there's letting someone go. Next one, put to sleep. Put to sleep is basically used instead of euthanize. So for example, sometimes, you may have a dog who is very, very sick and probably suffering, going through a lot of suffering and pain, probably really, really, really sick and just can't take it anymore. And of course, you wouldn't want your dog to suffer. So you would euthanize him. You would pull the plug on your dog, just to save him from all the grief and pain and suffering. So putting someone to sleep, putting an animal to sleep, is better than saying, I euthanized my dog. I put him to sleep. Next one, pregnancy termination. Pregnancy termination is used instead of abortion. So if you're pregnant and maybe you're just not able to have the child, or maybe it's not healthy for the mother to have the child, maybe she will be very sick. In that case, the mother will have an abortion or a pregnancy termination. It just sounds better than saying, I had an abortion. I terminated my pregnancy, or I had a pregnancy termination. Okay. Next one is on the streets, or without a roof on one's head. And these two are used for someone who is homeless. So instead of saying, you're homeless, or he's homeless, you say he's on the streets, or he's without a roof on his head. Again, it just sounds a bit nicer than the reality of what the situation actually is. There are many, many, many different euphemisms that we use all the time. For example, instead of saying, my sister is fat, you say my sister is overweight, or my sister is full-figured, or big-boned, or chubby. It just sounds nicer than saying fat, because fat does have a negative stigma attached to it. Same as poor. Poor, instead of saying, my brother is poor, you say my brother is, part of the working class, or, he's low income, or whatever it may be. It just sounds better than poor, again, because poor has a negative stigma attached to it. And finally, the one that I've already mentioned, handicapped, it's really not a nice way of saying somebody is unable to do something. The best way to say it, in my opinion, my favorite, is differently abled. But you can also say disabled, physically challenged, or disadvantaged. All of these different ways of saying handicapped just sound better and nicer, I guess. So thank you for watching. Again, it's Sarah with talktoCanada.com. I hope you learned something, and I hope you're not going to go and, use any really, really, really harsh words with anyone. I hope you use the euphemisms that I've introduced to you today. Thanks for watching again, and tune into all my videos.